board members that would like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Sue Boley. I am really interested to hear what you have to say tonight. So I'm excited. I'm happy you're all here to give us your thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Boley. We appreciate you listening in and collecting the thoughts of our staff. I would also highly encourage anyone that maybe doesn't want to speak out or talk out to please be sure to add comments to the chat. We are saving and printing off all of the chat and using both the questions that you ask or suggestions or topics that you bring up as part of a frequently asked questions document. So and then we will provide the answers and post those so that everyone has access to them. So please be sure to add to the chat, and please, as we jump into the 5 questions that we're going to ask tonight, to speak up and lend your voice to the feedback or input session. So a couple of things just as we get started. One is to please start out muted, and then if you want to share or answer your thoughts, unmute yourself and then remute. That will help with the noise level. Also, this is the 3rd of 3 sessions, and I have had absolutely no need to remind anyone of social norms. So I appreciate everybody being respectful of each other and their colleagues. So thank you in advance for that. Friday, there will be a survey sent out to staff. That survey will also include information provided, the latest information provided from the CDC and from the Shawnee County Health Department, so that you can review those latest guidelines prior to completing any survey, so that you are taking those things into consideration as well. And then a little bit about our timeline. We will get some information from KSDE as they release their initial document for guidance tomorrow to superintendents. So we have been very fortunate in Topeka Public Schools to have staff on every one of those committees, from the implementation committee, operations committee, the oversight committee, and also the phase 3, which is I think still in progress right now, which is the committee around professional development. So we have in Topeka Public Schools had representation on all of those committees with the state. So taking into consideration their guidance and their documents, along with the information that we're gathering from these sessions and the surveys that we've already given and the survey that will be shared with staff on Friday, we will work to write our plan and release that early next week. So I just wanted to kind of share the timeline before we got started. Okay, so I will just remind everybody that this has happened in both previous sessions. People ask questions or state things as questions. I am not going to answer your questions. It's not that I can't or don't want to, and I don't want you to think that I'm being rude. This is about us gathering input from you. So we are here to listen and to gather your input. So if things are phrased as a question, just please know in advance that I won't be answering those questions. We value your input and your voice to this process. So we will get started with question number 1. TPS may delay all in-person classes for 60 days, approximately through October, and only do remote learning during this time. Exceptions may be made to only extremely challenging family situations. Please indicate your comfort level with this approach and your thoughts around this possible plan. I have great wait time, it's okay.
Hi, my biggest concern with that is special education. because of the mandated minutes that we are required to meet, how will that be met through distance learning? Since in the spring we were not able to meet with small groups, I just would like to know if there's a plan in place yet for special education and special education minutes.
Thank you.
I've got a comment is that if we do distance learning through October, I have no problem with that except for when it comes to exams. Is there a way to have the students show up just for one day a month under special circumstances? Something to consider.
I'd like to add that when in the springtime for my AP class, I did teach them weekly 2 hours a week. And things that I learned from that were that once I start using the whiteboard or any other type of accessory with Zoom, I can no longer see my students. I just saw like maybe my box and maybe somebody else. And if I heard a ding, I didn't know if somebody was coming or going, but I just kept teaching. We did have to establish some norms and make sure people were present. But at least there was that recorded session if somebody was absent. And so I just wonder, how will we monitor our students in a Zoom class? And perhaps the elementary did that and we just need to learn from them. But while we're teaching, how do we monitor our students?
Thank you.
I'll say one more thing, and that is that we also at the end of the school year, the science CNA committee thought about what if we had to do school at home, would we be able to do any hands-on experiments at home? And so if we are going to be delayed for 60 or more days, will we be able to get those lab kits to give kids so that we can do at-home hands-on experiences?
Great questions and great ideas.
I was wondering about if you're going to start later, which I don't have a problem with. Are we going to extend that into at the end of the, will we be, our school year be the same session length of time and going into the month of June so that we can finish out the school year?
I wanted to add that I know we used Zoom pretty much extensively in the spring, and we didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare, and I thought we did a great job given the time that we had. However, there are many more platforms other than Zoom, and having just taken the Google Bootcamp and the blended learning classes, I think that if we have to delay class until October or later, or go back and forth with virtual, I think there are a lot of platforms that are very effective that we can consider.
I think too that we need to come together and have one collective agenda or policy that states what the expectations are for students in regards to attendance or to turning in work, all those things that we really, I think at the secondary level, saw a lack of in the spring during the fourth quarter. Not very good attendance, hit and miss with turning in work, no expectations as far as a grade. I know some of those things were dictated to us by the state and we didn't really have a choice. But I think moving forward, we've got to have, if this is going to be the norm, we've got to have some expectations there that says if you don't attend, then you're absent. And then of course, then you get truant and all those things that come into play with, not following the expectations or the rules or what have you. I think that's going to have to be key to ensure that our kids are getting it, is if we start having things in place to make that work for attendance and other things.
Okay, I'm going to move on to question 2. Question 2, TPS will provide a mask for all students and staff to be used at school. Staff and students are required to wear masks during times when appropriate distancing is not possible. How comfortable are you with the expectation for yourself and for your students if implemented during the school year?
Angela Lewis from Topeka High. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think sometimes there's an assumption that high school kids, since they're older, can follow the instructions and wear a mask. But my concern is that we do a lot of disciplinary types of things between, during passing periods, and our classrooms are very full. Social distancing is nearly impossible at Topeka High, and I feel like the mask thing is going to add another layer of discipline that's going to make it very difficult to get done what we need to get done. And I'll add that along with that, I hope that whatever decisions are made based on the safety of all of us, children and adults, and not on political pressure. And I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, as a healthcare worker, I work every other Saturday at the hospital. I have to wear a mask and a face shield for 8.5 hours. I do remove it in order to take a drink or to eat, but then I have to put it immediately back on. And so there's questions about, like, do kids need to wear, like, when can they take it off? Can they take it off in the bathroom? Can they take it off when they're eating or when they want to go get a drink? It does make your glasses fog up. The face shields would probably have to be an additional piece to that, because the mask is not sufficient. And so you can get disposable face shields, but the face masks are going to have to be replaced on probably a daily basis, particularly if it gets hot and sweaty, because they get really damp.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask what has the district looked into as far as transmission rates among teenagers? We've seen an awful lot of major transmission sites in sports training and in summer camps in Kansas and Missouri this summer, leading me to believe, and I mean, I think the logical assumption is that it spreads through teenagers who have adult bodies, pretty much the same as it spreads through adults. So I want to know what precautions we're taking, assuming that we have to treat it like it is a full population of adults at the middle school and high school.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to question number 3. TPS may conduct temperature checks or health screenings for students and staff who come on campus per county guidelines. How comfortable are you with this?
I feel like temperature checks are a must do. It's not an option. I think it needs to be done. And there also needs to be policies in place for what happens when a student does have a fever and we can't get a hold of someone at home.
Susan Patrick from Topeka High. Just like with the mask things, Sandra, in this case, also pointed out something really good, or it made the general sense of that there are going to be quite a few challenges with these things, and we're close on time to get them decided, you know. Yes, I agree with temperature checks. I also wonder what that will look at Topeka High if they're all coming in one door, which we can never get them to do. There are 14 doors, and the time that it would take to get him through that into class in any kind of reasonable time. Thank you.
What about the parents who give their children Tylenol to make sure they don't have a fever when they come through the check so they can go to work?
Also, I mean, we have lots and lots of asymptomatic cases and many, many reports of people who have not had temperatures when they begin to be infectious and they, acquire a fever later. So, I mean, especially, the most common guidelines are symptoms appear, but you've been infectious for at least 2 days prior. So even with temperature checks, we have people coming in and spreading infection.
I was going to ask if they would take it a second time. If they take it when you come in the morning, maybe they would take it at lunchtime as well, because I know it would take forever, especially at the high school level, but it seems like that would be a little more preventative, that you could see what was happening as it was going. But I don't know, we all don't have full-time nurses either to do that at every session, but it's an idea.
Thank you.
It would take multiple staff members to do that at Topeka High. And one thing to remember is we're dealing with adult bodies, and kids easily can refuse and turn around and walk away and then later be right back in the building. So while I'm not saying that temperature checks are a bad idea, I'm saying we have to be very realistic about what this looks like when you're dealing with adult humans.
The concern that I have with temperature taking is that I'm willing to bet that most of us who are teachers are not also medical professionals. I'm reading these comments regarding the HIPAA laws, and in the end, we're charged with constitutionally providing a free and appropriate public education to our students. As someone who is not a medical professional, I sure wouldn't want to be in the position of making a decision that a student was not medically able to attend class, since it seems like there are many teachers that will probably be pressed into duty to doing the temperature taking. That's the concern that I have, going along with the several HIPAA concerns that have been voiced in chat.
Thank you.
My question is, when it comes to flu season and this COVID outbreak, what are we doing to keep the cleanliness in the schools and, sort of like to combat a 1-2 punch with flu and COVID? That's what my question is. What is the school district planning on doing when it comes to that?
Okay, we will move on to question 4. Question 3, which has question 4 has multiple scenarios. Scenario 1, our plan is to implement whichever scenario is at the level that the county allows us to reopen. Scenario 1, 100% of students are on campus with distancing requirements, social distancing requirements. So 100% of students are on campus. And we are using CDC guidelines on social distancing.
I literally don't see how that's physically possible. I mean, we don't have enough physical space on our campuses. We don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough support staff. We just cannot. It is not physically possible.
I have to agree with what Jasmine said. It's really going to be a huge challenge.
At Topeka High, we have kids whose desks, the back of their desk touches the front of the next desk, and that's not by design, that's by necessity.
There are also huge considerations for hallway passing and the congestion of hallways. Yes, we know that we could put arrow tape down, but just looking at what happens in public stores with people following that has been a little concerning, let alone keeping masks on, use of restrooms, water fountains, those kinds of things that are basic needs. You know, not even getting into the classrooms, but just the perimeter of classrooms is unsafe with 100%, I would think. I don't know how to answer that with 100% involvement.
Does it need to be a one-size-fits-all approach for all 3 levels of schooling, or will there be able to be customization based on the needs of that population?
Again, these are all great questions and topics and ideas for us to consider and to think about. I appreciate all of your input.
To piggyback with what Carrie was asking, not only by age or grade level, but also by location in the city, as we know that there will be hotspot flare-ups at different times throughout the city in different community areas.
I teach at the elementary level, and one of the things that we do is breakfast in the classroom. And so if you want to talk about a time where there is definite unmasking, if we're serving them food, they're coming in and they're eating with us. I know the last round of CDC guidelines said that, you know, kids should stay with their single teacher all day long. And so my real concern then would be if we're 100% back, we're feeding them in class at breakfast, we're feeding them, I guess, again in class at lunch, how that would work out for us.
I'd like to piggyback off that and just add on that knowing that this disease is airborne, when we have people unmasking in our rooms, once we put on those masks again, the viral load that's floating around the room, unless we have an excellent ventilation system, which, let's be real, our buildings have poor ventilation and many classrooms, no windows. That viral load's just floating around, waiting to be breathed in by people for hours and hours later.
Okay, scenario B. 50% of students are on campus with distancing, and the other 50% of students are home remote learning.
My question there is, how do we decide which teachers are teaching remotely and which teachers are not, and all the problems that go with that decision?
So to clarify, it would be 50% in the building and 50% learning remotely at different times, but all students would be in the building 50% of the time and learning remotely 50% of the time.
So you're saying you might be teaching the class as well as the remote at the same time? Is that what it would look like to you?
That's a possibility.
My thought on that is that once you're exposed, so it makes no sense to be 50-50. I mean, if we're gonna set foot in classrooms, we might as well just be there.
I think an important thing to remember is that we need to be, Brenda Blackman was on here a few days ago pointing out some stuff. She works for the Shawnee County Health Department over the summer. But an important thing to remember is that we need it to be in 2-day groupings with a break in between if we do anything like that. Otherwise, you're exposing everybody to everything, and it is actually no better than 100% in person, except for in terms of viral load at any one particular time.
I want to say that Ross Elementary is amazing and is probably going to do really well at whatever plan we end up going with. But I need to say that I'm more comfortable with 50% in and 50% out. It's just going to be how we make the determination of who gets to come and who doesn't. I mean, if it's a trade-off that we do, like we start off August with group A, and then we start off January with group B in the house, that would be something I'd be more interested in.
That would make more sense with people who have to return to work and they don't have a place for their kids to be part of the group that goes right away like that. But then they'd have to make allowances some other way if they trade off, and I don't know, maybe later. Also, I think that if we have some on, some off, that might help some of our special needs students get some of the things that they need in the building. But I'm concerned about how we keep them from, you know, with the way we usually work with special ed kids, either the paras or the other facilitators take small groups of kids, and then they move from class to class, or the kids come to one place. It seems like they may be at higher risk, but if there were not other students there, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a consideration. I'd be happier with 50-50 than with 100%. But again, I think it's all in how we would pick who would go and what their needs are. So.
I'm fine with 50-50. I just am wondering how's that going to happen when I'm supposed to teach the kids in class, but yet still provide that full attention to the kids with blended learning. I'm afraid kids are going to fall through the cracks on not getting my attention that they deserve.
All right, I have a comment on that, and we're talking about 50-50. I wonder if we can split up the class into morning and afternoon. Say the morning students will do, say, one couple classes in the morning, whatever they're doing, and then in the afternoon it'll be the second group, say group B in the afternoon. Would that be something that the health department will look on favorably? And if we do something like that, we need to make sure that if we got students, high school students who actually do a little bit of childcare in the afternoons, we got to make sure that if we're doing the morning afternoon split, that the siblings are in the same morning or afternoon as the high school students. Because I know a lot of my students often take care of their kids.
I think if we're not careful on how we're splitting these things up, I could see high school kids, and I would suppose maybe even grade school kids, even under the direction of their parents, not knowing or forgetting or getting confused on, was I supposed to go this morning? Was I supposed to go tomorrow? Is it my day to go? I just think whatever the plan looks like, whether it's half days, every other day, a whole whatever, we need to simplify that in some way to where people aren't going to get confused, whether it be the parent or the student, knowing which day to go. We just got to have a simplified plan.
Okay.
So it would certainly take, I'm sorry. It would just certainly take cleaning, extensive cleaning in between each group of students that come into the room, and you know, that takes time, as well as a lot of cleaning materials.
And you know, I think you got a good point, but my concern is who's the one doing the cleaning? If it's teachers doing the cleaning, then are they subjecting themselves to the virus by doing the cleaning? Or are they supposed to, I mean, I don't know how the cleaning is done to begin with, whether the custodians are putting on a hazmat, you know, overalls or whatever, or what, but I mean, I don't know. There's some fear there that think that I'm going to be doing the cleaning and I'm putting myself into that mix one more time throughout the day. Now I'm cleaning it up. I just don't know. Not knowing how it's transmitted or how you get it, I think that's my fear in me cleaning it up.
Okay, I'm going to take a minute so that we can function on time and move on to the next scenario. So scenario C is students generally in distance learning with only small groups of students on campus.
I'm far more comfortable with this idea, mostly because it really reduces the risk of transmission. I know we all are really concerned about, especially our special case students who are at risk at home. And so I think this is an okay compromise to getting people what they need. Because you have to balance the risk and benefit. We have to make sure that we're not killing our students. But we also have to make sure that they are getting what they need education-wise. So having the smallest number of people on campus as we can, while also providing high quality online instruction, which we can learn from our experience last spring, I think is the best approach.
And part of what the gentleman at the bottom of my page said was, we don't even know what lasting effects there may be. So while we may think like, oh, kids will be fine, we don't know that for certain. And we also don't know any long lasting effects that they may have from it. We do know, we just heard last week that it's airborne. So would we, especially for rooms that have no ventilation or little ventilation, would we create some type of ventilation for those rooms?
I'm going to chime in with a parent comment centered around routine and expectations. Through this whole process, being sent home, not going back to school, then, for my family, our summer daycare was canceled. And so it's just been a continuous change for my children. So whatever you guys plan on, please remember routines are important, and knowing the expectations is helpful not only for the parents, but also for the children.
I definitely agree with that thing about routines, particularly because, okay, so if we have people who get COVID, then we have, let's say I get COVID, well, my entire class now has to quarantine. I have to quarantine. You have to find a sub. If one of my kids gets it, then all the people they came into contact with has to quarantine. And that really ruins the routine and structure and expectations for them and can cause mental health issues.
Thank you. Scenario D, 100% distance learning, all students off campus.
I've been studying the whole issue profusely and almost obsessively. And while I still don't know that there really is a good answer to any of this, and I thank you all for allowing this feedback, because I know that's the situation that you're in to make the decisions. I feel most comfortable right now with the distance 100%, only because there's still too many unknowns. And rushing into a situation that might be potentially very hazardous health-wise, I think can cause more problems than it can solve. Just like the last teacher said, one of us gets it, then we've got classrooms of kids, it starts fanning out into other problems. If we do 100% online, but really put into place some nice structures and expectations, it can be better than it was in the spring.
Okay, well, it's summertime. That means it's time to make our annual visits to the doctors. 2 of the doctors I went to had children who had online schooling, and both of them said the major issue with their children not attending was having been told that grades didn't matter. So that would be one thing I think needs to be clarified. And second of all, having been in some of these other meetings, there are many, many, many staff members who are very concerned about taking the virus home to their families. So I'm afraid that there needs to be a lot of focus on what will need to take place if you end up with a whole bunch of teachers staying home.
my suggestion is that we would have people from each school who are consider themselves comfortable with the distance learning model become part of the school leadership team in each building and take those leadership roles towards the development of an effective online learning model, at least to begin the school year.
And one thing I would say too, again, is working with special ed kids. I would say in the spring, we did not use any breakout rooms because we were all worried about, having 2 teachers and everything. But I think that if we're going to try to work with special ed kids, we're going to have to use some breakout rooms for smaller groups for some of those kids, and to get some familiarity with that, with the teachers, and have us working together better that way. And like we've all said, having a lot more of a commitment from the students for grades and for attendance would be really helpful. In that way, even if they had special needs, they could go at a slower pace in a breakout room.
Can you tell me how this is beneficial to any of these children? Because mine didn't learn anything when we had to go to online. There was no teachers except for maybe 15 minutes a day. There was nobody teaching them. They weren't getting what they needed from the teachers. So explain me how not going to school is going to be beneficial for them.
Thank you.
Well, it may be, we know it's beneficial for students to go to school. We know that, there's no question. But we also know that the virus is in control, and we can't skirt around that. So, because if we do skirt around that, we're going to have a loss of life. So we have to really weigh, is what's more important, education right at this point, or health of our students and our population. So, and it's a difficult balance, but we've got to pick health.
Right, but what I'm saying is,
excuse me,
they're saying that this is not spread from the children, because children under the age of 10 do not have to wear the face mask right now.
Okay, so this forum is for you to express thoughts and ideas, but not, we are not necessarily providing answers to questions tonight. This is simply a feedback, input gathering forum. So I am going to move on to question number 5, which is, what is your greatest concern about starting school?
Hello?
Hi, as a parent, I like the summer education options that TPS put out. My students were able to sign up for subjects that they were interested in. They did well on the apps or the websites that were provided. Maybe adapting a little bit of extra options such as Spanish speaking or coding into the fall or spring semesters would be a way to entice the children to participate. I have elementary kids, so fun learning is always appreciated.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, so the question right now is, what is your greatest concern about starting school?
If I'm being heard, I guess I would say that it's interesting because when you deal with viral contamination, one of the ways to stop it is for everyone to act like they have it. And you learn that in school. I've yet to hear anybody say that anywhere. So that's one of the things that's very interesting. We should be teaching the children one way to stop this and to act as everybody wants to get back to normalcy, as they say, which is a very hard thing to define today, is for people to act like you have the disease. That's one of the ways in which you control this. All this skirting around conversation, I'm not being mean to any of it, but why aren't we teaching people, teaching ourselves and teaching children to act like you have the disease, and then you can do a different bit of functioning? You can't discuss this. It isn't a discussion. It's something that you have to set rules, parameters on. That's one of the reasons why it's hard to determine how to send the children back to school. But in that instance, I think there should be a mix of allowing the children in Shawnee County to participate in all aspects and resources in all the school districts in Shawnee County. Don't force everybody into the school. Let the children and the teachers schedule their classrooms and schedule their availabilities. Because once again, these seniors from 2021 will be entering a world that's never been there before. So it's the school ability and really kind of their necessity to teach the children coming out how to participate in this new world, not to get it off Twitter, not to get it off Facebook, not to get it off some other popular app somewhere, but to be taught this.
I'm going to briefly make a quick comment. First of all, good evening, everyone. I will be heading back to the parent session. This has been very helpful. I do want to just briefly mention a couple of items to Carissa's point and to the point that was just made as well on the iPhone. Know that this session and the idea was really to not only get survey feedback, because everybody doesn't fill out a survey, but to hear verbal feedback so that we can use all of that to begin to prepare for our movement into next year, whatever that may look like. I do anticipate we will be offering several options because there is no one size fit all, and I don't anticipate that we're going to please 100% of the people. But by listening, you are giving us ideas, suggestions, thoughts, concerns, but that allows us to create what those options might be, and there will be several. We do know that on Friday, the State Department will issue what guidance they are giving school districts. And from that, we know that on Friday as well, we are hosting the county superintendents to come together to share thoughts and ideas. And on Monday, we will be using all of your feedback and the surveys that we've received to really finalize a plan because then we'll have quite a bit of information, including what the health department says at that point. So again, this is incredibly valuable for us. And all these videos will be posted by tomorrow. The last videos are already posted from the last sessions if you want to look at that, just to be fully transparent with everyone, as well as the frequently asked questions. So thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't say I miss you all. It just seems weird to go for spring break and not to see some of the faces I generally see. So thank you for the feedback. And again, we look forward to looking through this tomorrow morning. Thank you, Ms. Wallace, for facilitating, and I'm gonna head back to the parent session. Take care and be safe.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a few minutes to gather a few more thoughts or ideas on question number 5, which is, what is your greatest concern around starting the school year?
My greatest concern is just keeping people safe. All of us would prefer in person. I think that anybody who doesn't prefer that as a teacher, why are you teaching? But of course, we have to be mindful and intelligent in decision making. So staying alive, keeping our kids safe, keeping our community safe, that matters more than anything else.
One of my biggest concerns is if how you can have 100% in class and still have social distancing, and in middle schools when they go from class to class, are you going to be disinfecting the desks in between time?
I've heard a lot said about mental health as I've studied and read over the past 2 weeks, I guess. And I think we also have mental health issues to think about in terms of bringing our children, our kids, our teenagers back together. A lot of their mindset is going to be based on the home that they come out of. And so their fear level may be very high, and they may be very stressed about coming back just as much as there are some kids who being at home has been stressful. So when we talk about stressed out kids and mental health and all of that, we need to remember that that goes both ways, regardless.
And I'd have to piggyback on that because I can speak for my own kids in the sense that right now at this point in time in their lives and what's going on, I could give a rip if my daughter knows Pythagorean's theorem. However, having coping strategies on how to deal with this reality, I really think when we talk about lessons and all that kind of stuff on down the line, I think that's probably going to be the first thing I'm going to be asking my kids as they go through is, what'd you learn about how to help yourself? And we're doing it here, but I couldn't care about cursive. I want to know if she's okay.
Thank you. I want to end with thanking everyone for participating. I've seen some of the faces, all 3 sessions, which is wonderful. I appreciate you bringing your voice to the table. And as Dr. Anderson said, your voice and your thoughts and ideas will help us craft the best possible decisions. That, along with guidance from KSDE, from the Shawnee County Health Department, and from the CDC. So, and the information and input from parents as well. So we do appreciate everyone's voice and your time to commit to sharing your thoughts and ideas. So thank you. And as Dr. Anderson said, it is nice to see some faces. It's been a while since we've seen people. So thank you.